All right, so we got Leron Rogers here, who is a well-known and respected entertainment attorney. He's represented a bunch of the big name clients that you all know in the game. And the one thing that I always recognize with entertainment attorneys is that you all wear a number of different hats beyond just being an entertainment attorney. I guess if you were to think about all the different jobs you have, how many do you think it actually is compared to the actual work of doing law?
Man, let me start. Psychologist first. Sometimes even before being a lawyer, I'm the psychologist. Business advisor, certainly. In my case, since I have a finance background, I talk extensively with my clients about their finances outside of how much money they earn, about just how to keep the money and what to do with the money. And then you're a legal advisor, sometimes family counselor, you know. But all those things. It's just part of the gig, man. It's just part of the gig, and part of providing white glove service for our clients.
What first brought you into it? What made you want to get into entertainment?
Man, so when I first went to law school, I was really going to be a sports agent, not in necessarily in the music space. I played baseball. I was drafted out of high school by the Braves, got a baseball scholarship to Oklahoma State, got hurt my junior year. It was like, oh, okay, let me get this education stuff together. And then, I wanted to go to law school. So I went to law school and actually became a sports agent my second year of law school, signed the 33rd pick in the NFL draft as my first client while I was in law school. And I was off and running being a sports agent. After law school, got a job at a big law firm here in Atlanta, kept my sports practice, was running around on the weekends, being, Jerry Maguire. And during the week, being a low-level grunt associate, learning how to practice law really well. And moved over to a boutique firm that did both some sports and entertainment and general corporate work. And one of the partners did a lot of entertainment work, and so I just learned the entertainment business doing some of his overflow work as a young lawyer. You look up some years later now, 70% of my clientele is in the sports, entertainment, technology space. So that's just kind of how it is. That's how it's evolved, man.
And I bet even within that, there's a bunch of differences, right? You have sports clients, you have
Yep,
music clients, you have
yep,
film clients.
yep.
What are some of those differences like working with that range?
I'm pretty unique in that regard because, most entertainment sports lawyers are pick one. You either pick sports, you pick, music entertainment, or you pick film and television. And I've been very blessed in that I've had a really broad cross section of clients. So I've gotten, not only good familiarity with each of them, but, just good relationships and expertise in each of these areas. So, at the end of the day, it's about servicing the client. I don't treat an athlete any differently than I treat an executive at a Fortune 500 company or someone who's starting a startup technology company. We just walk them through the process, give them white glove service, and just try and over deliver on what we do. But some of the things I think we're uniquely positioned to do is that, I see angles that other lawyers don't see. I think partly because I have a finance background. I can talk finance with them. I could talk when I'm talking to an in-house counsel at a Fortune 500 company or a startup. I understand their cash flows. I understand how a pitch deck should look, in the VC world, the private equity world. So when I'm talking to clients in the music space and in the sports space, I try and put them in the same category that I treat Fortune 500 companies and their boards. I say, look, you're the boss. This is your brand. This is your company. Have me part of the team, but we got to build a board of advisors and a team such that you can operate more like a corporation and we can make corporate moves and corporate decisions and not everything just be willy-nilly and reactional. Let's plan this thing out. I mean, corporations don't just poof, here they are. They build and they plan and there's strategy behind it. So I try and bring that perspective, like let's build strategy so we can build this out to have success. So I think that's one of the things I have. And before I even go further, man, first of all, I want to congratulate you because I didn't know about the platform. Right before I jumped on, I just did a quick, Google like everybody else. Like who am I gonna be talking with? Who's Dan? And so, I saw just the last couple of episodes you had. My guy Johnny Shipes from Cinematic. I have a couple artists up there with Johnny. So I worked with him. Tracy Chan, who interestingly enough, I invested in Crowd Album, his company that he exited to Spotify. This had
Oh,
to be
that's
like,
what's up.
this had to be like 2012, bro, like 13, you know. So I was an early investor with Crowd Album. Tracy's a really smart guy. Then who else you have? Oh, Lindsay, James Lindsay was on there, which I have some dealings, some business dealings with him. Ventures on Rap Snacks, and then Brandon Pankey at Live Nation. Like, these are the homies.
Yep.
I'm like, oh man, you got the homies. So hey, congratulations to you, brother. I appreciate the things that you're doing for the culture and for the business, because it's needed and it's necessary. So yeah, I want to give you some kudos, my man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And yeah, hearing you rattle off those names, it's a reminder of how small these circles really
Very
are,
small.
right?
Yeah.
Everyone really knows everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone who's doing something.
True. Everyone is doing
and who's
something.
old enough to have been in the business for a while, right?
Right. Well, you said something interesting there that I do want to go back to about how you want to make your clients, musicians specifically, look at how they're running things the same way a Fortune 500 company would, right? And I imagine for a certain type of artist, that's an easy switch. They have that corporate mind, they want to set things up. But I also imagine for some of them, it can be a bit difficult because they like the flexibility. And that's especially how things were in the early stages. Is that a challenge for you to be able to implement that with them?
I mean, first of all, you just have to take the client where they are, right? There's clients that I get in their, 18, 19, 20, or early 20s, and they haven't been beyond their block, right? And so they have a different perspective than a client who is, has been traveled and handled other businesses, whether or not it's in the music business. If they handled another business, there's a different level of conversation. So, it's not that bad. You just take the client where they are, and we start the education process there. And, it doesn't, sometimes it's quicker than others. So, we don't get frustrated with them. We just educate them and try and keep them on the rails.
I think that there's been a lot more education now for artists, especially. There's been a lot more talking about, hey, understanding how contracts look, understanding how you want deals set up, all of those things. So my gut tells me that that would in some ways make things a bit easier for you over time, but maybe not. How's that been on your end?
You would think that it would make things easier, because you're right, information information's power, and people have the information at their fingertips via Google or any other search engine, right? But there's almost an overload of information out there as well. So, what I have seen, although the young artists that I've picked up, and even athletes that I've picked up, they aren't necessarily educated in the intricacies of the recording agreements and how it all works, because it's a very convoluted process in terms, especially in the music business. What are all the royalty streams, understanding what rights you have to have, and what what societies you need to register with to make sure you have your royalties, and making sure your copyrights are done. Like, there's an entangled web of rights that have to be really gone through methodically, right? So they don't understand that, but what they do understand and are keenly aware of some broad strokes, like, I would like to have ownership of my master recordings or my publishing, or at least let's have the discussion of what that looks like, and understanding that that is of value. So, they're much more likely to say, I don't know, should we do this co-publishing deal? I had somebody else telling me that we should do an admin deal because I get to keep 100% of my rights. But you have to understand too, if you're a young artist, it depends on leverage. If you're going to sign to a production company, and part of their deal is they want to have part of your publishing and or part of and own the masters, but they're going to put up some money to get your career started, then we have to have a conversation. Do you really have the leverage at that point, or do you want a different route? I have the conversation with clients all the time. You don't have to sign here, but this is not, I'll tell them, this is not a bad deal for where you are in your career. If we have some success, we come back and renegotiate. And that's the one thing that's unique about the music space, is that it's very routine to renegotiate if you're successful. And so, that's always something you have to keep in the back of your mind. But I also had an artist here recently who had a little bit of success, got approached by a major label. Well, I thought had a very fair, very good deal for a new artist, but he was stuck on, I want to own my masters. I want to own my masters. And I had a conversation. I said, okay, so you own your masters. What's our plan? Like, I'm all for it. Like, what's our plan though? Let's execute a plan. I can bring in PR folks. I can bring in a team of digital marketing people, and people who have relationships at the DSPs to, help get on playlists and we can put the whole play together. But do you have, $50 to $200,000 to roll out the plan? And then they got quiet, so it's back to education and telling them this is what it's going to take to get to where you want. There's a saying, if you can build your own house, right? I can go out and cut down the wood and saw it and sand it and everything. That might take me 2 years, or I could hire a builder and have it done in 120 days, but I got to pay the builder, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's there's always trade-offs. And so it's the individual artists that they have to make that decision based on where they are in their career. I have some clients that are economically able to launch their own career. They don't necessarily need a major label, right? They have the resources and the funds, and I just help them put the team together, and we put the sauce on it and we go, right? And then when we go to a major label to do a deal, they're calling us. And then the whole leverage has changed. Now we're doing a licensing deal instead of, transferring our masters to the major label. We're just licensing it through their platform. We're using their marketing team and radio resource on an a la carte basis instead of, how it's typically done. So, but it all depends on leverage. Some artists are just happy to get a deal, right? They have very little going. They don't have any money. They don't have a team, and they've caught the attention of some A&R. And you know what? That's okay too. Let's go have some success. Let's put out, make a platinum record and get some singles and make some money. And then your life changes, and then things open up. Record labels become a little bit more reasonable. Say, okay, they've made some money. At their core, most record labels will treat our artists fairly. I've found that. I mean, I have a lot of relationships at a high level, and if they've made money and everybody's making money, they're much more likely to say, okay, let's do something. It may not be exactly what we want. They'll do something. They'll do something.
That makes sense. So is it fair to say that, let's say, all the artists are coming to you like, hey, I want to own my masters, I want to own this. But you're like, okay, if you have that 50 to 200K to be able to make your own type of budget that the major label would, then you have a case to, own it, do your own thing. Maybe we could come back and build up leverage. But if they're not at that point, then it's like, you kind of have to give up something, or you say no at this point.
Yeah, and it's not always just about the money, right? Because I have had clients that just catch lightning in a bottle, and if they're very adept at using social media and all the digital platforms, and they really create a community and they really get some adoption, they may not necessarily need to have a bunch of money, but if you're starting from scratch, you're not that adept, and you don't have a really savvy team, then you're gonna need some money to bring in those consultants, those folks that have those resources to make it happen. But yeah, I mean, you do have to have that brutally honest conversation that you don't have enough leverage at this point to garner what you ultimately want. And just know it's rare to get to sign with a major label where you don't have to have them own your master recordings at this point, right? That's super rare still. I mean, it happens, but it's super rare. And but you have to have hella leverage. But if you get that leverage, you can get it.
And on the other end too, are there ever any artists that are so successful, like they don't even want to do licensing deals? They just want to keep everything on their own.
Well, you have to license it somewhere because you have to put it on a platform. Even if you put it out to an independent distribution platform like a Orchard or a TuneCore, Create or something, those are licenses. And so it's for a shorter term period. And all those rights revert to you. So that at its core, a license is just, I give you the permission to put my songs on all of the retail digital platforms, the Spotify's and Apple Music and all the others, the dozens and dozens of those. So at its core, it's the same. It's just a matter of how long they have those rights, and then when you get those rights back and how much money and resources they'll give you. So that's really like the magical combination. And there's no right or wrong answer. That's the beauty of really having a seasoned entertainment lawyer, is to know, is this worth $200,000 or is this worth $5 million? That's where the secret sauce comes in, from just having experience, being able to gauge what the excitement level is. Because I've seen, attorneys mess up deals because they don't understand the marketplace. And so they think it's a $5 million deal when it's really a $500,000 deal. And so they mess up their client. Their client maybe never get a deal just because they have unreasonable expectations. And then but on the other side, seen clients or some artists whose attorney doesn't understand the value and signed for $200,000 when they could have gotten, $2 million, right? So that, again, that comes from just experience. And that's what we bring to the table. I mean, I've been doing this over 20 years. Shoot, I'm getting old, almost 22 years.
And how much has that landscape and you following the market changed, especially in the past few years, given the rise of TikTok and all these other platforms where there's leverage and there's a following being built, but whether that is a flash in a bottle or that is something sustainable compared to all the other things that an artist is evaluating things on?
No, that's a great question. So, when I got in the business initially in the late 90s, this was right around the time that, a lot of the dope boys were really controlling the airwaves. So you think, okay, why are the dope boys controlling the airwaves? Because they had the money to pay the DJs. They had the money to pay the radio promoters. So that's what got played on the radio. And then record labels thought, oh, that's getting played on the radio. That must be popular. And so that's what got signed to major labels, right? So fast forward in the last, say, 4, 5, 6 years, the landscape has changed because technology is a great equalizer, right? So now the kid who makes dope music in his closet, in his room, messing around with the dope young producer that he's homeboys with, they can go through it to a DSP like a TuneCore, some of the others that I mentioned before, and their music can be up there at the same on the same platforms as some of the biggest artists in the world. Now the difference comes in you have the music on a platform. How does anyone know it's up there? Now that comes down to how the artist can mobilize and get in touch with and connect directly with their fans, typically online. So that's where the landscape's changed. The new artists that are savvy enough in using TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, some of the other platforms that don't have all these regulators on there like IG does and like Facebook does, and allows you to get to more fans quicker. If you can do that and you can build your fan base, you can be equalized with some of the biggest artists in the world. But you have to understand that technology. You have to understand that the record labels are looking for certain algorithms and they're looking at certain metrics to see what's your week over week increase on certain platforms, and they're tracking it. There's some 21-year-old at every record label who does nothing but look at metrics. They don't know good music from bad music. All they know is it's like a stock. They see that stock going up. They see your ticker and they're like, okay, who's had this week over week jump? And then they tell their low-level A&Rs, go track this person, go find them. And that's how it gets going. But if you're not part of those algorithms, you don't understand that, you're not even in the conversation. Like if you just go to terrestrial radio right now and you don't do anything digital, who's gonna find you? The record labels aren't even looking at terrestrial radio to break new artists. In general, everything's online. So you have to understand that.
Right. And how would you say that piece has changed how the artists that get chosen to be either signed or the artists that end up getting signed to record labels has evolved? Because so much of that seems so analytically driven, right? And of course, there's a correlation between the analytics and that gut feeling or that intuition of who's popping. But it
Sure.
kind of reminds me of this argument that we're seeing in the NBA now, where you have analytics has taken over in a lot of ways how NBA is being discussed. And you have the people that more old school preferred when analytics just supported arguments but didn't drive them. Are you seeing that as well with how things are shaking out with you and working with artists and major record labels?
Yeah, I think the litmus test or the entry level is you have to hit certain metrics to get on someone's radar, right? To get in the building's radar. But then once you get there, then the more seasoned record label execs get involved, and they get to the point where, okay, does this feel like a hit record? They want to eyeball the artist. They want to see, is this a superstar? They want to fly them in, see the swag, see, eyeball them and see what's going on. So I think it's a combination. But yeah, it is typically a litmus test to even get in the building, unless, that A&R who just has a good ear somehow comes across the dope artist and like, wow, that's dope. And then they take it in and they don't care about the metrics because they're like, I know what this can be. Those are the true A&Rs, and there's just not that many of them anymore. And it's getting smaller and smaller, and you get a bunch of record chasers who are just chasing metrics. but that's not the music business at its core. The music business at its core is it's a feeling, it's a gut. How does that song make you feel? Did you get goosebumps? Did you, like what? That what the hell moment, like what the hell is this? Who is this? That's what you want, right? As an A&R person. And I think there are still some true A&Rs out there that really get that and understand that. But even they still need the metrics before they can go in and make their case in the building to say, hey, we should sign this, especially if you want a big check.
Hmm. So what do you think has happened to the A&Rs? Like why there aren't as many of them at that level that there were before?
That's a super interesting question. I think just at its core, the major labels have moved away from developing artists. I think they have increasing pressure to meet quarterly earnings reports being public, which causes a much quicker turnaround cycle for success. Whereas, back when I got started, it was nothing for a record label to say, okay, we're going to take some time. We're going to take 6 months. And we're going to build an album, a dope album, and take our time, put this together. Now they're like, nah, we're putting out 20 singles in the next, 4 months, and we're going to see which one, if any of these pop. And so it's just the mindset's different. They don't want to bet the shop on one thing. They just want to test it out. And that's what I've seen as, the biggest change and why there's not the development that was there once upon a time. They'll just chase a record. They'd rather put their money on a record that's already going and dump a lot of money behind it and blow it up, because they're going to make the same amount of money as whether they blow up that one artist or whether they take a bunch of time and develop 4 or 5 albums for other artists who may or may not hit, and they've taken 6 months with each. So it's back to being a singles business, man. It really is.
Yeah. And I think that just the lower barrier for creating music and for releasing music and putting it out there is part of this too, right? Before, when the barriers are much higher, you're going to have much more effort put in at those levels. But now, when it's that cheap, it's like you might as well just spray, right? It's
Shoot your
almost
shot.
like a seed funder, like just like
That's
boom,
right.
put it out there.
Shoot your shot. Yeah, you might as well. And that's the model, and again, because of how the algorithms work, you have to have new content out on a regular basis in order to stay on top of the Spotify algorithms and all that, or else they don't see you. And that's the problem. But if you don't understand how the algorithms work, then you say, oh, I'm gonna create this great collection of content. And hell, if it takes you 3 months to do that, people forgot about you. Like, yo, where you been? You got to put out content. And you just keep mashing the gas. And that's the world we're living in now. But if you don't understand that, you won't have a chance. You won't even know why. And your music could be dope as hell.
Yeah, no, it's a shame. It's a shame. But one of the people that you do represent that I think has been very consistent with content since he came out has been Rick Ross. And in one of the higher profile cases that you had done recently, he is actually in a lawsuit with 50 Cent, who he also had a long-term beef with. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what was that like, both trying to navigate the lawsuit when there's this underlying beef that the two of these artists have had for more than a decade?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. I think in this case that 50 initially started the lawsuit because I think he was just trying to get under Ross's skin. If you remember, he lost a $7 million case against Rick Ross's baby mother, which Ross had absolutely nothing to do with, right? So, 50's not used to people standing up to him. He's not used to people, he's not used to losing and all that type thing. So, he gets on his bully pulpit. So he filed a very innovative lawsuit, a right of publicity lawsuit against Ross, because Ross had used his song in a mixtape, right? Obviously Ross has the resource and the patience to see it to the end, which 50's probably not used to. And I respect 50 Cent and his attorney's argument. It was a very creative argument. It was actually a first of its kind, and it was, like I said, quite creative. But obviously we didn't agree, and we won at the trial level. And 50 being 50, he took it up on appeal, and we kicked their ass on appeal as well. And good guys won. And so it's one of those times where big boy meets big boy, and it's a different conversation. And we're not bullying anybody when big boy meets big boy. And so we teed it up, and that's what we do. We warriors, and we went to battle, and we were successful, and that's cool. For Ross, I don't think it's a personal thing. He's just like, we handled the business and kept it pushing. We got money to make. We're not worried about this kind of stuff. We out here trying to be on the road to $1 billion. We have a whole different perspective. Like, it's our conversations are different.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And even just the way that Ross has built everything up. I mean, I think he's putting out a book in a few months that's about
Second
building
book.
that billionaire mindset,
Book.
right? Oh,
Exactly.
second book. Yeah. The first one was good. Hurricanes, the memoir.
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Yeah. No, it's good. Now he's quite the unicorn, right? So he's super talented. He's a business person, but then he also understands marketing and the power of that. And fourthly, he also understands how to stay relevant, right? And connect with the dope young artists and add value and be the OG, but then also keep on the dope music side. His music didn't age. So he's a unicorn, man. I mean, it's a pleasure to work with, be part of the team.
So when you talked about working with artists to develop that Fortune 500 type of group, I feel like he is one of the people I envision when you were saying that, right? Whether it's what he has with Wingstop or some of the other partnerships he has, how he's continued to build MMG, all of those things are just examples of like what he's done and the relationships that he continues to keep both inside of rap and outside of rap too.
Yeah, now, it's, again, being a unicorn, when we came together, and he understanding what he understands, and then me saying, really explain to him the power of multiples and how business exits work, and why the value in getting equity in a deal can pay off in 5 or 7 years when companies exit. And so that was we were the perfect match, because he knows how to get everybody's attention. And then I understood how to structure the deal such that it will make sense. It will make a lot of sense. And it makes sense right away, but then even long term, the brand partnership deals that we're involved with, we think are going to be very successful on, not just the front side, but then on the back side, just immensely successful.
That makes sense.
It's good. And it can make sense because an artist should, also take some flight with the company when they have success. And that's one of the things, like companies like Instagram. The Instagram got bought out partly because of our lifestyle, our success, our culture made it pop, right? But there weren't very many, I don't think hardly any investors that looked like us who had equity when they sold out for $6 billion initially, right? So that has to change. If we're going to help a platform bring eyeballs to it, and we're going to help that platform launch in the culture, we have to have equity. Like, we have to have a real conversation. Otherwise, I can go support something else. And so I think that's the real change here. And this is our opportunity to, get a piece of the equity in things that have the potential to blow up, especially on the technology side, which is, I think, one of the things that I have some core competency is, like I was telling you, I invested in Crowd album with Tracy, and that was almost 10 years ago, right? So I've been in this space for a while, but bringing that mentality to the entertainment space and saying, oh, you have value, bro. This is how we're going to take your value and get you paid now as a brand ambassador, but also get you some equity. So when this exits at, $1 billion or $5 billion, you get another big ass check. Something you never even imagined, that changes your whole wealth perspective. And that's what many of the artists never had a conversation like that, because at its core, many of the entertainment attorneys don't have that finance background. They weren't doing VC deals. Before I went to law school, I was a financial analyst with Nations Bank. So I have a core finance background. So my conversation is just different, and my perspective is different. I see opportunity. And so that, I think, I bring a lot of value to clients in that regard.
Yeah. And with Ross specifically, I would love to see someone like him getting a piece of equity in some of these companies that I know are going to be coming out of this whole Miami tech scene that's been getting more and more attention in the past few months.
We're already working on it. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Down there. Ted Lucas is pretty primed in with the mayor and politics down there. So we're already having those conversations. But yeah, really, to me, I didn't realize how much Miami had really come on the scene in terms of the tech. Obviously I've always known Silicon Valley, and Boston's been really at the forefront, especially on the financing side. And where the financing is, generally the people who, all the technology folks and all the programmers are generally gravitate towards there. But Miami has really come on as of late as a core hub for technology companies basing their operations there, which means they need talent there, and just a conglomerate. So I'm super excited about the possibilities, and stay tuned.
Yeah, no, same here. I actually had Ted on the podcast a couple of months ago, and I brought up to him, I'm like, hey, you're in Miami, you've been following this? And he was like, you know what? I actually just had a meeting about this today. And he was like, you're in San Francisco. How did you hear about this? And I'm like, hey, man, word travels fast, man.
Word travels fast. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Now, Ted's good dude. Good dude.
Yeah. No, he's good people. He's good people. Then I guess on the topic of Miami, I know one of the other clients that you have or did have at one point is the Marlins. And I'm sure that must be very different because you have artists, you have entertainers, but representing a team, that must be a very different experience. What's that like compared to some of the other clients that you've represented?
Sure. Representing a major sports team is, I also represent and have represented, UPS, Crystal's restaurants, big restaurant groups and whatnot. And so, all those organizations have an in-house counsel. They have a general counsel and a team of attorneys. And, they will at points in times need outside counsel to handle certain things. So, because of my relationships with, a number of in-house counsel, when they need something that, is either in my expertise or something that my firm can help with, we get the call and we come in and hired guns and we do our thing, and we turn them back over better than we found them, and, keep it moving. So it's a little bit different dynamic because they're very savvy. Obviously, I'm dealing with, their in-house counsel, and I'm talking lawyer to lawyer, or maybe we have the CFO on the call if there's something that's a big, financial implication to their bottom line. But it's definitely a different level of conversation. But again, I try and take that level of conversation and impart that to the entertainers and the athletes that I represent in their individual capacities, because I've seen how big corporations act and the decisions that they make and the thought process that they go through in order to make a decision, and try and bring that same process into the entertainment and sports individual and their smaller team, and just so that they have more likelihood of success.
Hmm. That makes sense. I bet the fact that they do have the in-house counsel does mean that you probably have to wear less of those hats that you may normally have to wear relative to managing musicians, and probably more of the legal stuff. But, I'm sure that has, plenty of other dynamics to it as well.
Oh, certainly does. Certainly does.
With that, I mean, I'm sure that you're probably going to have, I feel like it's almost inevitable that whether it's the Hawks or the Heat, like some type of NBA representation at some point.
Well, locally, I know all the general counsels, so, and I do business with them, whether, I've negotiated stadium licensing deals on behalf of clients with each of the teams locally, and a bunch throughout the country. So, yeah, I have tons and tons of relationships on the sports side and in-house counsel on the sports side. So, and, I'm also the president of Black Entertainment Sports Lawyers Association. So, that obviously gives me privy into a lot of, companies and in-house counsel, and just knowing people in the business, which is obviously of value to my clients, because there's a legal stuff, and then there's sometimes just the relationship, being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, let's work this through. This has a potential to be a problem. We don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's talk this through. And you'd be surprised at how many times I'm able to do that and just avoid a lot of, legal wrangling, and just get right to the core of it because I have a relationship with someone, and get something resolved. Not all the time, but it does come in of value at times.
Mm. And I'm sure you
if
get
we got to go to war, we go to war. But we try to resolve it.
I love it.
Don't make me bust in the head. I will, but I'm gonna be nice and try and get it done amicably.
And I'm sure you must get hit up a lot too by young associates, people in law school just starting out that are like, hey, how can I get to where Leron is 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What are your advice points? What do you normally share to give them some pointers on how they can level up their career?
Sure. First of all, be a student of the profession, right? If you're in law school, get good grades, take it personal, be involved, get involved with organizations, be a top student, top whatever that is for you, be the best student you can be. Don't just take it lightly. Then when you get your first job, wherever it is, whether it's being at a law firm or in-house, whether you like it or not, there's something of value you can pick up from that. You know, when I first came out of law school, although I was a sports agent, I worked for a big litigation firm, and I never wanted to do litigation, right? But they gave me a job, and I needed to work, right? So I was doing business litigation, slip and falls, labor and employment, stuff that I didn't like labor and employment. I didn't like slip and falls. I didn't like all that kind of stuff. But guess what? I learned how to be a good litigator. And so when I went to the boutique firm, I started doing more transactional work. But because I did litigation at a big firm, all those partners at the big firm, at that boutique firm, they gave me the litigation to handle. So I handled tons of litigation in mostly in the sports entertainment space because they didn't want to do it. They were doing transactional work. So I did the litigation. But because I had the value, because I got the background in doing the labor and employment, doing the business litigation, doing the slip and falls. Now, when my clients, like a Ross has, you know, a number of Wingstop restaurants, somebody's slipping and falling. We got sued, you know, recently, you know, on the case. Now we can handle that. Now, you know, labor and employment issues. Now, you know, I didn't realize it at the time, but now I have better perspective because I had a broad, general, good base of legal expertise. And so that's what I try and tell young lawyers is become a good lawyer. Even if you're not doing exactly what you want, I learned how to be a good litigation lawyer at that firm. I wasn't necessarily doing what I wanted to do, but then, you know, 3 years later, when I changed firms, I brought value to that firm because I did something that they didn't do and they needed me and I wanted that transactional experience. So it was a win-win. So now I added value. And that was part of the reason why I was able to go to that firm, not realizing had I said no to the litigation firm, say, no, I want to do M&A, I want to do that. I wouldn't have been able to add value to that second firm. So just become a good lawyer because you can't add value even to a client if you don't know what the hell you're doing. And don't be afraid if you get a client that, you know, they have an issue or problem that you don't necessarily fully understand, bring in somebody that's their go-to specialty. Your client will appreciate it. They'll come back to you and they'll always come back to you because they know you're going to take care of it. You don't just try and fix something or do something and you mess it up, right? So, you know, those are my things. And network, and, you know, start building those relationships early while you're in law school, you know, when you don't need people, and then try and add value, you know, where you can, to older folks who are, you know, more seasoned than you. You know, don't just come out with your hand out. Oh, I can do, you know, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? No, I'm busy. There's no way. You know, when I was young, I thought all these older lawyers were just bullshitting and, you know, taking forever to call me back because they were just dissing me. No, we're busy as all get. So, you know, so if you do want to get a mentor, don't just ask to be a mentor. Find something you can add value. Hey, you know, I saw you do this. Here's an article that may be interesting to you. Here's something that may be some of interest to one of your clients. Do something that's unique. They're like, oh, make you pay attention. And then say, you know, can we go to lunch to discuss it? Or can we have coffee for 30 minutes? You know, one early morning, like you have to do it in snippets. You know, I can't even take the number of calls or emails or people that reach out that are law students wanting a mentor. Like I just don't have the capacity. So, you know, but there's no one way to do it. I've helped a number of young lawyers, you know, that have worked for me or otherwise. It's not, you know, some of them have different paths, but they have some semblance of some, you know, the things that I've mentioned.
And I feel like you're living proof of everything you said, right? Like you are doing the things and you're in the position you're in now because you took all those steps. You were willing to do those things. And I feel like you're now doing the exact things you want to do. But I'm curious, is there anything that you're not necessarily doing from a business perspective or a law perspective that you want to do eventually down the road?
No, I mean, I'm blessed right now in that I'm in a sweet spot. You know, I'm 50 years old. My kids are fine. One's graduating from college, the others are in college. So I'm cool. I can retire in a couple of years, but my passion, Dan, is now changed. Like I'm in take over the world mode. Like, okay, what's my legacy gonna be? You know, and I think my legacy is helping at least 5 clients exit $1 billion company in the next 5 to 7 years. Like that's my legacy. And I'm on the road to that right now with some plays that are already in place. But I just think that's going to be exciting. I'm excited about it. You know, when I talk with clients and I show them the roadmap of how we get there, because I've been involved in companies that have done that, and I've seen it, and I'm like, oh shit, I was just having drinks with the founder 2 years ago at San Francisco Music Tech. You know what I mean? Like, and now he just exited. Whoa. So now I'm like, well, shit. Okay, now I know what I know. I have the relationships. I understand the financial piece. I understand how to put the pieces together. And now we're about to bring this to the Black side, and we're about to add expertise and really some real direct consciousness and purpose to exit some $billion exits in the next couple of years. And I'm super serious about that. And you know, it's like I said, it's already in process. But that's my passion. Like that's where I'm trying to get to. And then I can chill. Then I can chill. I feel like, okay, I did it. I'm good. But of course, you know, my lady's always like, you're never gonna sit down. It's gonna be something else. But it's
I
all
hear
it's
that.
love
My,
though.
my
It's
wife
love.
says the same thing about me. My wife says the same thing.
It's all love, you know. But you
Yeah.
need that passion, you know. That's one of the things about I love about the music businesses. I don't know if you ever been in the studio when a hit record gets made, or you know, when after it comes back from mixing and everybody's sitting like, okay, play the record, and everybody's like, oh shit, this like that feeling you have, you know, as that I've had the opportunity. I don't go in the studio much anymore, but that I've had, you know, when I was a younger lawyer. I now get that same goosebumps when somebody's telling me their business idea and it's in a technology space. I'm like, oh, that's scalable. Oh, we can put this piece together. We can raise this. And I'm like, oh shit, this is something we can exit, you know, and I can put all the pieces together. And I have those same oh shit moments about a technology company or something similar that has some nice multiples. And it's just a different perspective. You know, I'm older and more wise, and you know, and I understand, you know, how the multiple games work. And so that's, you know, that's what I try and bring to the table, man. It's fun. It's really a lot of fun.
That's good. And you're the good person for it, man. That's
Hey man,
dope.
somebody got to do it.
Exactly. All right, Leron. Well, before we let you go, anything that you want to plug or let the Trapital audience know about?
No, man, again, I just want to say thank you to you. I appreciate you doing this for the culture, doing this for the entertainment community, and knowledge is power. And however I can support you, just let me know, please.